So it took a while for me to get around to recording this, but this is basically just kind of a general video I want to shoot about an RTS I have in development. For those of you who are not familiar, RTS is an abbreviation for real-time strategy, generally referring to a genre of gaming. In this case, this is kind of a take on a older piece from way back in the day that was panned upon release by critics for many reasons. Stability not being the least of them. Piece in question was called Lego Rock Raiders. It was a mining simulator and the least Lego-y game in all of existence. You had Lego guys and you had Lego buildings. Everything else, the dirt, your pavement, the walls, all that stuff, basically, excluding, say, vehicles or some select things, weren't really Legos. So, what about the table's very unique mining experience that I think was quite notorious. In fact, it has a pretty, or at least used to, a pretty dedicated modding community because it was a very unique game with a very odd take on things. And we're essentially looking to reinvent the game, but with more stability, more challenge, and probably just overall better features, lore, and cooler tech and all that. The first change of which is it's not Lego based anymore. Who would have guessed? Oh, well, me, because I don't work for Lego. And with no offense intended, I don't want to. They have enough people working for them, and I have enough things I already need to handle on my own. So, let's get to things. The first thing you'll notice is I have my options menu open with this little gear here. I can toggle this. My screen edges are red. That means I have locked the screen, which you can do with the X key. Now, you can also toggle full screen with tab. I'm not going to do that here because that may stop Fraps from recording. I don't want to do that. However, I will say that there is also a clause for Alt key, so if you Alt tab, you do not resize the window. Although the Alt key may become permanently depressed until it is further checked. So you might have to tap it upon re-entering the window. Still, better than Alt tabbing and changing your window size to full screen. The controls are fairly adjustable in some senses, and they will hopefully be even more adjustable later with the key bindings menu and such. But for the time being, what we have is controllable frames per second. I'm at 30 for the sake of recording and not screwing up game speed. We have game speed, which you can adjust freely to half speed, single speed, double speed. There's not a lot to see there, but you can do it at any point in time, like the original Rock Raiders had. There's UI scaling, which looks like complete ass salad, to be perfectly frank. 2 times is the default, and it looks pretty good. You can do 1 times, and, or so you can do 1.5 times, which looks a little weird. It's passable, but not by a lot, quite frankly. And then you have 1 times, which is, as you can see, singularly scaled and is incredibly tiny. But I leave the option there, so if you did want smaller user interface, you can absolutely do it. You can adjust the scroll area, which relates to the area of the window which you can go past as a threshold that will cause the screen to scroll around so you can find more terrain. You can also use WASD and arrow keys to actually move the screen, including when the screen is locked in case you want to exclusively use the keyboard. Now you can adjust the scroll area in a number of senses, and it doesn't move the scroll area when you're on Windows, but obviously transitioning to Windows will almost without exception cause that to happen unintentionally. So we're going to lock the screen for interactive menus for prolonged periods. That tends to be a simple, good tactic for not accidentally screwing up what you're looking at. In case you just want to sit there and drop commands for like 12 hours on one wall, or however long you're going to just bombard an area with orders, you can absolutely do that. Now, we're going to increase the area. This area is not actually multiplier, but instead a dividend, meaning that the larger the number is, that the less sensitive the edges of the screen are. So increasing actually decreases, and decreases actually increases for logic on this. About smallest it goes is 0.9, which as you can see is basically the entire screen, even including the very slight amount of error from Game Maker's native commands and some crap about mouse position, because this is not actually where the mouse is at, where the mouse is rendered. It is within that, give or take, up to 5, maybe worst case 10 pixels of error at any point in time. That is, like I said, related to Game Maker's native commands, seeing how they're adjusting to any window size, operating system, etc. A tiny amount of inaccuracy is passable. So yeah, this would be totally disorienting as you basically can't stop in any practical sense. So, but if you decide that's how you want to do it, just lock the screen all the time, you can do it. 1.6 is the default, and I find this to be very conducive for a windowed environment. However, if you want to do full screen or pure keyboard control, you can set it to all the way at the borders, the maximum setting of 800, which of course is a gap leap between 2.5 and 800. 800 is so small, in fact, generally speaking, only by scrolling off the actual edges of the screen can you get movement. This is very hard to do in windowed mode, if not borderline impossible on a practical basis. But in full screen mode, this will operate like most conventional RTS games, where only by leaving the conventional screen with your mouse can you actually cause a scrolling movement. As you can toggle between full screen and windowed mode at any point in time, we keep this fully adjustable at any point in time. And it will actually save all four of these sliders in their current state for any time you load up the game later. Obviously, I generally play on 60 FPS. You don't really gain a lot of efficiency from 30 FPS, but I thought I'd throw it in there in case there is any perceived benefit. It made it feel more retro and suited to pixelated graphics, or whatever you want to say. For the time being, 60 is the default, times 1 speed is the default, times 2 user interface is the default, and 1.6 area is the default. And these appear to be the most optimal settings for most gameplay experiences. Of course, the fact is you can change them at any point in time, as I've said probably a million times in the course of this video, so ideally it's very convenient. Now we get to the priority screen, as indicated by the tiny hammer. I currently cannot actually see where my resources are exactly due to the frames per second indicator in my upper left, but I can see I have a geode icon that is obscured with a obscured X and then a 0. I have a ferrite ore, which apparently these actually have some very interesting tooltips stuck to them. I'm pretty amazed at that, actually. I'll need to look into that later, but for now, there's also a metal indicator which is tinted red and does not have an indicator, as I do not have a refinery in my base at the moment. That is to be developed at a later point. This is mostly a core fundamentals demo. Now, we have 9 tasks as viewed here. This is basically more or less the same 9 tasks as like Rock Raiders. What can I say? They covered a lot of things. Collecting ore, collecting geodes, what we have instead of crystals essentially. Digging up dirt, recharging expand shells or depleted ammo, which in the original game was depleted crystals. We have drilling walls, constructing buildings, answering vehicles, repairing your buildings, and reinforcing walls. Now, we've taken this to a new level because in LEGO Rock Raiders, you could rearrange these priorities anywhere you wanted. You could set these to be the highest priority, the lowest priority, whatever. We have a hotkey for right-clicking to lower to the absolute lowest priority, which is in addition to the top priority and the swap priority that they already had. On top of that, we have these little borders, and these borders are full of information based on color. For instance, if it's green, the order is enabled and is allowed to be assumed by your men at any point in time. If there's ever a point where you were collecting tons of ore but you needed crystals or to build a building that would lend you oxygen for your men to, I don't know, freaking breathe, you could at any point in time disable ore dynamically just by clicking the left side, and your men would stop picking up ore for the time being, and they would go do more important things, quite frankly. In this manner, you can not only set what tasks are important, but what tasks you can and cannot do at any point in time. This allows you to micromanage your men in a macro sense. It is quite frankly a brilliant mechanic that was always in LEGO Rock Raiders. However, there is one major flaw with their system, and that is the fact that certain tasks were assumed by default, such as shoveling, picking up ore, picking up crystals, and constructing and getting in vehicles, and surprisingly not repairing your base and recharging crystals was actually an automatic priority. But the problem is that there was no way to toggle whether or not the priority was automatically assumed. So if you told the guy to go pick up a rock, he would probably go do it if the priority was disabled. If you wanted guys to repair your base, you'd probably have to be issuing direct orders or possibly re-enabling the order on a temporary basis. But here, priorities that cannot be automatically assumed have a gray right half that will instead toggle the on-off state. And those that can be assumed in automatic state will be blue if they are engaged, or yellow if they are disengaged. I'm not sure why entering vehicles is actually non-automatic priority. I might change that later, because I can set the defaults if anytime they want. I will likely not store the priorities in an INI file, as most of these priorities make sense throughout a mission, and you can adapt them per mission. LEGO Rock Raiders always did that, and I would always rearrange my 9 priorities in about 8 clicks to get where I wanted. And I found that to be quite profitable as far as the efficiency and how convenient it was, even if I had to do it every mission. We'll see what development brings, as right now, as I've said, we're only on the core basics. So another change I want to indicate here is not only can you disable whether or not the priority should be manual or automatically assumed, but you can also toggle some new priorities. Currently, only the ability to reinforce walls. In fact, I think construction will probably stay as a non-automatic priority. However, I may have to look into that at another point in time, as generally just carrying things brings them to construction. But you also generally in Rock Raiders need to carry around construction barriers, so I will probably just leave this in kind of its state for whether or not you want to add barriers and finish your building and tax your power grid and all that crazy shit. But for now, what you can do as a brief demo here, and I have 3 workers and I cannot call in new workers as of yet, but I can enable reinforcing walls as an automatic priority. This was never available in Rock Raiders, and I quite frankly don't blame them. They don't want their plate, and probably tight schedule by the look of things. It appears Fraps is likely actually impacting our game speed somewhat. Yeah, we're running about half speed, so I'm going to double this down. There we go. So now we're running at about average speed, and we do have some sounds coming in. Hopefully I haven't cut out my voice too much. But, yeah, we do have some sounds. They're pretty prototype, and they're just a bunch of royalty-free stuff I've processed. Yeah, in any case, the metal grout and the reinforced walls automatically. In Rock Raiders, you had mini missions where landslides were a very common occurrence, and they would, especially in some mods, where they would increase the difficulty, reap many of your men's lives, and having to order them to reinforce every wall, click reinforce was not convenient. Or at least not convenient enough, and that's a small threshold because, like I said, you could be losing lives, and then you've taken the time to train and condition for your work environment. So you can toggle that completely on and off as you wish, just for the sake of that very tight threshold. Now, finally, we want to talk about the mining mechanics and what we have so far. We want to have demolition at one point, but currently demolition does nothing except color a wall red and make a dude stare at the wall wondering what the hell he's doing with his life. Obviously not our optimal goal. But we have various kinds of rock to review. This is kind of a repeat rock. I apologize for this. But we have solid rock, which cannot be drilled or used in any way. We have hard rock, which can only be demolished and reinforced or drilled by heavy vehicles. Currently we do not have vehicles, so it's demo only, and demo does nothing, so screw hard rock. We also have shale, which is actually a new element that can be drilled by any man, but will cause fracturing and wounding to any man that successfully drills the wall, meaning you will likely want to use drill vehicles to increase your efficiency. We'll also have additional hazards, such as quicksand, collapsing thin ice, your base freezing up and having in certain buildings get taken out of commission temporarily until chiseled out. So, based on things like that, we'll definitely have a lot deeper mechanics, but for now we're just focusing on geometry. We have loose rock, which can be drilled by any man, but will take a substantial period of time. We have dirt, which is easy as heck to plow through. Worth noting, reinforcing will stop landslides and possible other benefits I feel like I'm forgetting. But you cannot reinforce corners, and that may or may not have landslide potential. I believe in Rock Raiders it did. In this game we will likely not. However, we will still have landslide potential for the unreinforceable ore and crystal seams. These cannot be reinforced for the, quite frankly, blatant reason of their giant, greedy resource nodes, so pursuing them in a landslide-heavy area is something one should do at their own risk, and it is kind of its own trap and trade-off, which makes things interesting, I believe. We have a recharge seam, which is basically solid rock with giant geodes embedded in it for sapping energy from using their strangely symbiotic bond. Now, of course, we will likely not use depleted geodes, as their geodes are basically assimilated and not just simply stored and shoved around. But we will also process them into NGO shells, which are technically batteries, but are used mostly like a form of munition. You could load turrets, weapons, etc. with them. And then after being depleted, they can be taken to this to be recharged, or they can have the ferrite casing re-enriched to be recharged for a cost in case a recharge seam is not available in a mission or in your current access of the geometry of a mission. Now, on top of that, we also have the obstacle that you don't just use them right out of the box as your ammunition. You have to actually produce a NGO shell, which costs a single geode and possibly 2 or 3 ferrite ore. And this will actually refine it into a munition shell that can be used in a variety of applications, as they are kind of universal munition. We can also see, I thought I would mention that we have a very in-depth mouse cursor. It reads out names. In fact, it even reads out names smart. Here it's placed on the left. Before on the left, it reads on the right, so it's always visible. We also have lots of indication for user interface, other than this one bug I found today. And lots of other stuff, options, no name given, priorities, you can tell everything you're doing at a moment's notice, except on-off priority and automaticness priority. However, we may change that in the future, or we may simply add a tutorial that addresses the use of coloration, as it's quite easy to get the hang of. Now, moving on. We also have different icons for different things. An ore seam gives a picture of ore. A geode seam gives a geode seam gives a picture of a geode, and everything else is basically just drillable, except solid rock, which is not drillable, as you'll notice. We may do an icon for hard rock relating to automatically signing demolition, however, we're not currently sure on the standing of that. So from here, let's start issuing our men some interesting orders. It's taken long enough for me to get through all my rambling. I'm actually quite happy with all of my priorities at the moment, as they are a smart arrangement in my humble opinion. So we're going to toggle the priority screen to have maximum UI space to just wander around with our mouse. And then we're going to tell our men to go in and drill some shale to start with. I've right-clicked the wall twice, which means 2 men will become assigned to a task rapidly. And as they're assigned to the task instantaneously, they will break the wall very quickly, and we'll find out very much about our stability system as it stands in the game. There we go. It's broken. They're automatically choosing to shovel the dirt as is an automatic priority, and they're taking the rocks back to base. They're taken to our tool depot, and they're going to drop them off. We're going to gain ore, and then they're going to go check if there's anything else that it's picking up. 4 rocks, 3 men, so each of the men take 1 rock, and one of the men is singled out to grab a second rock. And the checklists are quite efficient. Where we're at right now, we actually handle all the orders, priorities, and etc. in this level with about 67 megabytes of RAM. And I can run comfortably 4 gigs, theoretically, probably about 5 to 6 gigs between. So, I could be probably running handfuls of the instance of this game if I wanted to. There would be no reason to, but I could. Obviously, we'll add more complexity, more resource consumption by animations, tech tree, different biomes, etc. So that resource cost will go up largely in denotion of the amount of image resources used by GameMaker. GameMaker appears to use by a crude estimate, so I apologize, and I do not stand by if this is not accurate, but quite simply about 20 to 40 bytes of memory for every singular byte of image file loaded. The good news is we have a very limited amount of image files we need for this game. We have terrain files, which are mostly repeated, as you can tell. We have tileable backgrounds, and we have repeated units. So, all in all, right now we're doing excellent for resource budget, and we'll expand as is possible and comfortable. Now, let's talk about those mining mechanics that just happened. 2 men came and they drilled the wall at double speed. Now, they broke that piece of the wall, but the wall next to it collapsed. Why is that? That's because in an arrangement of resources, particularly, terrain pieces, if a piece is not neighbored by 2 other stable walls, it will collapse from instability. This is a mechanic seen in LEGO Rock Raiders, and I stand by it entirely because it is brilliant. Actually adds a lot of mining strategy. Let me demonstrate. So let's go ahead and just drill some loose rock, which is just a little bit easier to drill than shale. fact, let's get all 3 men on just to plow through this at light speed. Dude couldn't even show up in time. Look at that. So, yeah, there we go. The entire 6-piece collapsed. If we review, we take out this center piece. This piece only had one supporting side. Collapsed. This piece, same deal. Same deal. And then left with these 2 corners, which after the secondary walls have broken, they are complete without stability of any sense, and they collapse. Now, to carry on what exactly happens in the world of mining, after you've cleared out a wall, a pile of rubble results from where the wall was. This is broken rocks and the contents of the wall. This rubble may potentially contain resources depending if there's NGOs or other resources contained within it, but will generally contain only an amount of ore that is dug out of the rubble. This is basically directly how it was in LEGO Rock Raiders, because in most games, a 2-resource system is efficient. You look at StarCraft, minerals, Vespene gas, boom, done. You look at Warcraft, you probably look at much more resources, but you look at many conventional RTS games and it's decided that 2 is the magic number, and Rock Raiders had 2. There's not anything else to say other than that's just kind of the norm of the RTS industry. Now, from here we're going to go on and we're going to drill an NGO seam. We're going to see a couple things in action. As we right-click, we can automatically assign the most obvious task. It could be digging floor with higher priority, assuming it's automatic and they go on to dig floors already. It could be drilling walls. It could be demolishing things at a later date. And maybe it'll be reinforcing if demolition isn't available, or I deem reinforcing more convenient, what have you. But right now, I can just right-click it. I'll get, for every right-click, 1 man trying to assume the task. So, NGOs fell out of the wall. NGOs being neutronic geodes, or geodes, NGOs for short, in any case. And those broke out because it was drilled in multiple stages, as these resource seams have high HP content, further adding to the mechanic that they are dangerous to mine, yet highly rewarding if you do. Further, we have actually just proven we addressed one of the big issues with some of the design aspects of Rock Raiders. Obviously, we don't use any of the resources or anything from Rock Raiders, but we draw high levels of inspiration. One thing I would say about Rock Raiders they would almost never see. If you had a resource seam that collapsed from instability by lack of supporting walls, it would actually destroy all the resources within the seam. As we saw with the secondary NGO seam, it also broke and dropped 4 or 5 geodes, depending, I forget exactly. And this actually caused the seam itself to drop its resources where it was. This is the smartest allocation of what to do with it after it's done, and like always, it dropped a pile of rubble. Now, we're also going to explore our sub-menus here. We can assign commands individually. For instance, I could say, go drill a wall. Simultaneously, I could go look at our ore seam, and I could say, go drill an ore seam, and go drill the ore seam, and I'll get 2 men on it. In fact, unlike Rock Raiders, the wall will get darker or more advanced with the singular color of its command, the more of the command is assigned. So, based upon that, it's easier to tell how strong a particular command is assigned. I command 2 men to dig that spot, and now it's darker than the other one, for instance. And look at them, they're absolutely clearing. If we review our priorities, cleaning up rubble is more important than picking up rocks, but not more important than picking up geodes. So right now, all of our men are following the game plan simply perfectly. We even threw the curveball at them of, hey, just start reinforcing walls out of nowhere. And they did it, and they did it well. So, now men are going forth, and they are picking up rocks, and they're dropping all the ferrite off at base. And at a later date and time, we will be able to develop tech. We will be able to pave a basic path using the unprocessed ferrite ore. We will also be able to build a refinery using a combination of geodes and ferrite. And the refinery itself will just serve as a processing station of transferring ferrite ore into ferrite ingots. And ferrite ingots will be used in most major construction outside of the refinery and the tool depot. In fact, they may be used in the tool depot depending on what we deem as resources. But as it stands right now, all of our core basics are incredibly strong. The UI is concise and looks great. A lot of things have really great just sort of responses. You watch these buttons get all squishy. We have a very intuitive UI scheme that explains everything to the player at face value. We have highly able to be calibrated settings, and arguably most importantly, we have working core mechanics for interacting with the terrain in a various number of ways, for finding resources, cleaning up after things, grabbing resources, counting resources. So while we are in the very early stages of testing out the RTS as it stands right now, you're starting out with an incredibly strong core for its development. Hopefully we'll have more to follow on this. I'm just kind of filling this in as I can. However, I am kind of dealing with tennis elbow rehab at the moment, so my progress is slow, which is oddly in a strange sense to emphasize production on this RTS, as it is an incredibly low stress on the arms to test play, and there is a lot of test play in order. Until next time, WCCC signing out. I hope you find this informative and to some degree interesting. We will definitely be looking to follow this up, as I may have already said. Yeah, that's all for today. Thanks and bye-bye.